on this episode of Killer Genes.
Now, the next day, we got reports of different body parts that were spread about the beach, shoreline. Her head, her arms, and her legs had been removed.
This is without question one of the most gruesome and what I can only describe as satanic thrill kills I've ever reported on. And when you learn more about the two individuals responsible, mental illness feels like the wrong term entirely. This was something far more sinister, a deeply rooted, twisted wiring of self-gratification at the expense of innocent life. And as I share this story, I'll offer you some personal insight and behind-the-scene moments from when I covered this case because it's still with me. So what continues to haunt me most to this day are the crime scene photos, which I will not be showing. I've reviewed hundreds of graphic crime scene images in my career, but nothing has ever compared to the disturbing nature of this evidence. And I still find myself thinking about the lead detective I interviewed, wondering if, like me, those images remain burned in his memory. So buckle up. This one is as intense as they come. They want justice. They want answers.
What stands out to you about his personality?
What's the family want most of all? But you were just the last person to see her. There's an arrest warrant.
And leave.
You have a lot of weighty accusations. Now, this horrifying case unfolds on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. It is one of the most iconic, vibrant streets in the world. It was here that 22-year-old Jaren Lockhart spent her nights working, and it was here that she encountered the couple who would end up taking her life. Jaren Lockhart wasn't simply murdered. Her killers, they went much further. They dismembered her body and mutilated it in a way that's difficult to even say out loud. It includes removing patches of her skin. I know that's a lot to process, so I'll pause there because right now, those crime scene images, they're flooding back in my mind, looking at them, reviewing what those final moments of her life must have been like. And as I often do in my reporting, I try to understand what drives both predator and victim. What are the psychological tipping points from their past to even cross, and what pushes someone to take a life. In Jaren's case, it was pure entrapment. It was carefully planned. This was premeditated. This was a thrill kill. And as heinous as this crime was, there was actually another eerily similar case linked to it, another woman who was also murdered and dismembered, and there's this bizarre link that I'll get into later on. Imagine being on vacation or just as a local, heading out to the beach to decompress, only to spot these body parts bobbing along the shoreline, and the shock and trauma being a civilian, something you're not used to seeing, just traumatizing. Then to find out the body parts, they belonged to a young woman. Her head was even separated. She was dismembered, and the killers then cut off pieces of her flesh to keep the cops guessing, to keep delaying identifying who this woman was.
We discovered the head.
What was the condition of it?
It had been in the water nearly 72 hours. It's kind of like when you've been in the water, you get all wrinkled up and discolored.
And that's pretty much all the body parts that surfaced in the water?
Yes, we recovered most of the parts, but we did not recover all of it. There were theories that the parts were dropped in different places.
Was there anything that you could gather from the condition of the body or the body parts that could indicate in any way the cause of death?
The strike with the knife to the chest was the cause of death.
In all of your years, have you ever worked a case such as this where your evidence is literally being washed ashore bit by bit?
No, not at all. I mean, these people they weren't like they were insane or mentally disturbed of some sort. They just wanted the sheer pleasure of killing someone, and they'd done everything they could to cover it so they could go on.
To solve this, investigators had to piece the parts back together in a sense, the best way possible. Meanwhile, the same time, a missing persons report came in just across the border in Louisiana. A woman, a young, pretty blonde woman who worked as an exotic dancer in New Orleans. She failed to come home from work. She worked on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, and she was about 22 years old. DNA confirmed it was Jaren, and the next question is, who killed her? Why did they kill her? And why did they do it in such a gruesome, horrific way? Now, she worked at Club Temptations as a dancer, so cops checked the security video, and they caught a mystery couple from the night that she went missing. The pair had reportedly been trolling Bourbon Street clubs all night long, making a very disturbing request. Now, I want you to listen to this. A woman named Lacey was one of two dancers who told cops they were offered $700 to perform, supposedly at this said bachelor party, but they said no to the couple because they were creeped out by them and gave them some kind of internal warning signs of danger ahead. So these two women passed on the offer.
Around 1:30, she said that we have to find a girl or else something bad would happen. That's when I said I can't leave.
In the past, I've covered one other known thrill kill. You may have heard of it. It's Alyssa Bustamante. She was a teen at the time, and she killed her neighbor, a younger girl, just strictly for the thrill of it, and it was well documented. It's really difficult to understand where that desire comes from. You know, maybe it was sexual arousal for the couple, maybe it's power, and maybe it's just, you know, the desire to see what it feels like, but how does that equate to a teenager wanting that same thrill kill? It's just something that is really difficult to understand. Now, back to the Jaren Lockhart case, I went and I also interviewed the neighbor to Terry Speaks, where he lived across the street from this man, watched his day in and day out, was always on high alert because the guy was off. He was just weird. This is what he had to say.
I don't know if there was a body in there or what, but he was straining putting them in there, put it that way.
And they were hard for him to lift.
Yeah. There was at least 3 or 4 big ones, and he was kind of straining with them, dragging them.
Well, it's interesting that you mention this because there was not one shred of evidence found in the home. It was completely wiped clean.
Yeah, you can smell the bleach from over there from to here. And that guy, I thought he was sick, you know, because how you do jumping jacks in the middle of your yard in your underwear and howling and screaming? And I'm like, this guy's crazy. And my wife said, well, we got to watch this knucklehead. I said, yeah.
There is no reason for Jared to be dead. None. She wasn't upset with them. They weren't upset with her. It's hard to believe. They just killed her just to be killing her. They probably had, you know, some sort of arousal or some unbelievable satisfaction from doing it. The actual, whether they were involved in some satanic ritual or they were worshiping someone, we never could establish that. But we do know that there was some evidence at the home, like an altar. Jared was not targeted because she was Jared. She was just, they needed a victim. They needed a female victim.
Later, pieces of Jaren's body were thrown from a bridge and would wash up on that beach 60 miles away on the Mississippi Gulf Coast for all of the beachgoers to see and witness. Now, on the day of the murder, there was an occurrence of a rare celestial phenomenon that happens only once in a century, apparently. June 6, 2012, when the planet Venus transits the sun, Sheriff Grannon believed the killer couple may have been enticed by the occult to offer up a sacrifice, a human sacrifice. But that's tough to really go into court with when it comes to trial. But that was an ongoing theory, especially given the fact of the foundation of New Orleans, the history of New Orleans, and the way she was killed. And as cops dug a little bit deeper, a bizarre connection was revealed. It was one of Jaren's killers, Margaret Sanchez. Get this, she appeared in a documentary called Zach and Addie. It's about the gruesome, similar murder of her best friend, Addie Hall. Her said best friend, but now who knows the truth behind her words? Because now cops are wondering, did she play a role? Was she inspired in some way by that sadistic killing because she was so close to the couple?
We do know that There was some evidence at the home, like an altar. Part of the ritual was the body had to be washed away in an ocean.
My name is Margaret Sanchez, and Addie and Zach were two of my very best friends.
Makes me believe she had something to do with Addie Hall.
And she would always just tell me, like, look, don't let a man rule you. She was like, you decide what you want in this life.
You were speaking to someone who had just taken herself way beyond what's real, you know.
What do you mean?
She knew what she had done was wrong.
In this murder, Addie's boyfriend, Zach Bowen, he had strangled and chopped her up, placed her head in a pot on the stove, and her legs in an oven. Absolutely unfathomable. Now, cops wondered, did she have something to do with this killing of Addie, Margaret? Was she mimicking the feeling from years prior? Answers won't come from Addie's killer because her boyfriend ended up killing himself. But when it came to Jaren's murder, Margaret Sanchez, she claimed innocence. When it came to the evidence, it was difficult because there was no DNA from all the water. As the neighbors said, the murder house was wiped down with bleach, and so was the car. There was no murder weapon found. It was a really tough case, a lot circumstantial. But it turns out Terry Speaks was a complicated character. In figuring out who he really was, he had many aliases, it turns out. Even Margaret Sanchez referred to him by one of his aliases. Did she even know that? At the time of Jaren's murder, he was wanted for failing to register as a sex offender. So the easy route was just throw him in prison for that violation while building the murder case against him. And that is exactly what they did.
We didn't do anything. And that's the real reason. In my head, God's looking out for me. You got me then. Y'all got me. Y'all got me baffled because I remember none of that.
What do you remember that night?
Dude, I got so many nights that are the same thing over and over and over.
Well, I do
that
too.
Are so insignificant that I don't even think about them anymore.
From the two of them, Margaret Sanchez, Terry Speaks, just denial, denial, denial. The couple was finally taken down by emails of all things, emails to one another, to Margaret out of jail, to Terry, who was locked up in federal prison, and hundreds of exchanges between the two of them over a few years, sent back and forth threats Terry was making to her. If he goes down, she's going down.
If she got married, there was some damning information there. He became upset with her over it because Margaret had indicated that she had found someone else and she was going to get married. And she starts reeling him back in, you know, I love you, that kind of thing, knowing that she's got to stay on board with him so he doesn't give her up. We believe to be the motive with the Venus transition. It was avoided because we couldn't prove it.
In the end, Terry Speaks is found guilty of second-degree murder, and he is sentenced to life in prison. Margaret Sanchez pled guilty, finally, to charges of manslaughter and obstructing justice. Now, she is serving 40 years in jail. Jaren Lockhart's daughter, she was then a few years older at the time of the sentencing. She was there to watch her mom's killers get locked up. And here's a side note to covering this case and just seeing the horror of the images. It's also the backdrop of this murder, New Orleans, right? Now, I reported in Las Vegas for almost 3 years, and I could write a book on just the debauchery that I was exposed to while living there. It's called Sin City for a reason. You know, you see New Orleans the same way. It's a place where people work hard, and it's within this tourist destination. And you see a lot of seedy behavior of people who get lost in drug-filled moments, acting ways there that they would never act that way in their own towns, in their own environment. You know, I was a news reporter on the evening news each night, and when I went to a nightclub or a bar after work to meet up with some friends, I absolutely had men, some married, some not, but try to shove money into my pocket and ask me for outrageous things or just to dance for them. They could care less what I did for a living. They could care less that I was an investigative reporter. I still personally had some threesome indecent proposal offers, which always freaked me out. I remember one time I just bolted to the bathroom and never returned. You know, it's something I eventually just learned to laugh off, but it exists in certain environments and in certain backdrops. Those, tourist locations, they kind of breed it. So something I didn't want to be a part of, to the point that I actually just stopped going out altogether because the seediness just grew too much. It's ego, it's attempt to control, or it's control with money. And circling back to New Orleans, when I was there for this national show, reporting for Crime Watch Daily at the time, covering this story, myself and my crew, we had to spend many hours and nights on Bourbon Street because it's where the murders first ignited. And it was rough walking through and witnessing people's just so detached from their different life back home. One night, I told my photographer, I said, I'll be right back. I'm going for a walk. I was planning to walk on over to the strip club to see if I could get some more interviews from the staff and manager to learn more about Jaren. And I wanted to line up some interviews and reconnect with my photographer, so I had everything lined up and ready to go. So my photographer at the time, he didn't love the idea of me going by myself because it was at night in Bourbon Street and it was pretty crowded, but I thought, it's just a few blocks, I'm fine. I carried my stick mic, it was metal, it was kind of like a police baton, so I felt safe. So it was at night with hundreds packed into the streets, and I do see on my walk a group of men, I would say college years, maybe seniors or just graduated. They looked all, I don't know, a little preppy or athletic in some way, big dudes, and they were clearly drunk, some stumbling, so I tried to just avoid them and walk around the group of men, but one of them just clocked me, zeroed in, and soon they gathered around, creating a circle. So I was essentially trapped and locked inside this circle of big guys. And I don't recall exactly what they were saying, but I do recall a bunch of them groping me, just random hands all over my body, and I freaked out. I was trying to push them and kick them and force my way through. All in all, it was only a couple of seconds, but the fear in my mind took over. What if they tried to take me? What if this? What if that? So I just started swinging, and I did push my way through. The moment had come and gone. It was just minutes, less than, right? But it was memorable. And it was just an added reminder of the vulnerability of simply being a woman in certain situations. And then add to that the equation of having to work in certain environments like Las Vegas, like New Orleans, where the behavior is kind of catered to in a way. And your vision really gets distorted. And I can see Jaren, young Jaren, thinking it's harmless for a few hours with this couple for a lot of money. It's not ideal, but that was her environment. That was the temptations offered to her every night. And assuming it wasn't the first proposition, who knows? But it's the time that it ended up being with two people that were looking to just thrill Carol. And I hope Jaren's daughter went on to have a better life, and I hope she is somewhere out there living her best life.